Hey guys, back again with Josh Ortiz here. We saw some baby Lacertas in a previous video, so he's going to talk to you a little bit about the adults here. This is, I'm assuming, an adult pair.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's an adult pair. So this sexual dimorphism in jewel Lacertas, which means the males and females look very different from one another. So this pair, I put them to soak, so it'll just be easier for us to take them instead of having them in their enclosure. So right here is okay. Lacertas are similar to tegus in terms of settling down after a little bit, so just need a couple seconds, that'll be fine, hopefully. Yeah. But yeah. So this right here is the male. You could tell, and I'll pick up the female in a second, but you see how he has a wide-based head? And you could also see, so if you look at the distance from his eyes to the end of his nose, it's actually pretty long. And then if you look at the muscle structure near his jaws, where the jowls are, they're really well developed. They use that for courting females, and they also use it to make them look bigger when they're going against males. So this has a lot of functions. In addition to that, they're just more robust. So they're longer animals, they're bigger than the females, they're thicker than the females, and then they also have femoral pores that are usually pretty pronounced. The femoral pores here. And then also, he's a little stressed here. If you look at the base of the tail, it's tough to see, but the base of the tail hangs lower. You can actually see where the hemipenes are. So this right here is a male. This is actually a young male. This male is a male that I produced, and he's about 2 years old. So here we have a female. This female is 3 years old. So if you look at them side by side, you guys can see the difference. So the male is on my left, which will be your right. And then my right, which is your left, is the female. The female, so you see a smaller head overall. The distance from her eyes to her nose is shorter. The base of the head is also more narrow. And you don't see the pronounced jowls. They do obviously have some muscle structure there. And the reason they have such strong muscle structure there, because being being omnivores from their environment, they eat a lot of different things. So having jaw strength will help them eat a lot of different items in the wild. It's more advantageous to have stronger jaw muscles. So this female as well, she is shorter than the male overall. She's a smaller build. And if you look at it, the male is more tapered. So he has like wider shoulders and it narrows at the base here. She is a bit more round and more equal throughout. And if you look at the female underneath, you're not going to see pronounced femoral pores here. And you're not going to see a bulge either. And so this is a full grown, this is actually a really big female. So this animal here is full grown, it's shedding. That's why you see all this here on the tail. So this animal's full grown. So this is perfect. I actually have housed these guys in equivalent to 40-gallon tanks. If you put appropriate surface area in there, you could use bigger enclosures. I've used bigger enclosures as well in the past. I've used 6-foot enclosures. But they could be housed in basically relatively small enclosures compared to like monitor lizards and things like that. Think in terms of like bearded dragon size. If an enclosure is too small for a bearded dragon, it's probably too small for a jeweled Lacerta. So they tame down really well. I know these were acting kind of crazy, but you have to remember it's nighttime right now. So I grabbed them out of their enclosure and I put them to soak so they could be on display for the video. So they're a little stressed out, but now they're starting to calm down because they recognize me, and in general they're just very placid animals. So again, this is the female here. She'll lay eggs, so they'll mate in around April usually, and about 30 days later or so, she'll have her first clutch, and then they'll lay several clutches a year. This female, this past season, I believe she laid 3 clutches. And they can have as few as a handful of eggs. They can have as many as like 15, 16 eggs. I've heard of more eggs in a clutch. But for me, my animals usually lay about between 10 and 15 eggs 3 times a year. So this female is actually the mother to the ones we have in a previous video.
So was he the father or was it a different male?
He's the father.
Yes.
It was melanistic to melanistic, which is why all the babies are melanistic.
Gotcha.
And what I'll do is I'll put these guys down and I'll see if I could grab. I have a male that I had that had an injured tail. It basically had a regen tail, and he's a wild type. I basically kept him kind of as a pet. So while you guys are looking at these guys here, I'll pull a wild type just so you know what they look like. Most of the ones I work with now are the melanistics, but I do have a few wild types because, you know, people like them and I like them. So one sec, so you guys can take a look at that. But this is a good top view right here. I mean, if you look right here, you see how she kind of pairs out, and she has like just like the wide hip region here. Yeah. And he has that more athletic look where he has the broad shoulders and he kind of tapers. He's actually pretty blue and lighter than the female. He's also, when they're about to shed, they look blue like this. And in addition to that, they vary. So this particular male, even when he's not in shed, is actually pretty blue. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all males are like this. There's plenty of males that are jet black. I have males that are jet black. So you guys can look at them for a sec. And I'll see if my wild type male wants to
come out. Yeah, I think it shows pretty well in the video, the differences, especially in the head shape and length. I got a couple different angles on that I think made that pretty apparent. What a gift.
Who's doing, trying to breed her?
I think he was going to the bathroom.
Oh, yeah, that happens. So he's freaking out. He was acting fine until I brought him down. So this is, you're okay, bud. He saw the other one, so he's starting to freak out. It's okay, bud. I'm not putting you in there. I know. Of course, he was calm. He was calm, and then as soon as he saw the other ones, he started freaking out. So this was a baby that I had. And a lot of times, if the babies, they don't often get regen tails. Usually it's because a cage mate mistakenly bites off the tip of its tail. If you feed them enough like we do, it's going to rarely happen. It'll happen once in a blue moon. But anyway, so his tail was bit off by a cage mate. It grew back kind of weird. I kept him as a pet. He's what's referred to as a het melanistic. So genotypically, he carries the trait to be a melanistic, but phenotypically, so the way he looks like a wild type. So if you were in like Spain and the surrounding areas there, the jewel Lacertas would look like this. They also call them green Lacertas. But green Lacertas is kind of misleading. He's afraid of the phone.
I know. Also, when I went to wipe my sweat, he didn't like that either. Yeah,
green Lacertas is kind of misleading because there's other Lacertas that are simply referred to as green Lacertas. So eyed Lacertas, they're called. They're also called jewel Lacertas. There's a few other names for them. It's basically Timon lepidus. That's the genus and species. They're excellent pets. They're very expressive. These guys are kind of antsy, because of the reasons I said before, but they mellow out just as much as a bearded dragon. Very hardy. The temperatures we have the adults at, we usually have their basking spots around 120-ish. For the juveniles, we put it lower. For the juveniles, I usually put it like around 105, and that's surface temperature, not ambient temperature for the basking area. And then the non-basking area, I usually put it at the higher end of room temperature, like maybe like 77, 78 degrees. These do brumate, so naturally in the wild, about half the year they're active, and about half the year they're not active. And that's what I do here. So soon I'm going to put all these into brumation. I do an artificial brumation for these guys. So I basically put them in a bin full of straw, and then I place them at about 55 degrees. And they'll be at 55 degrees for about 4 months. I check on them once a week. I pull them in the spring, they breed, and then you start getting eggs 30 days later. So it's similar to tegus in that respect, actually.
Now, you said they're omnivores, so what kind of diet do you feed them as adults?
So they're omnivores, but they highly prefer insects. He's freaking out every time he sees the one down there. They highly prefer insects, though. So these guys, I feed them a lot of roaches, crickets, mealworms, other phoenix worms we grow here. We grow not all of our food, but most of our food here. But I will give them things like bananas, blueberries. I'll give them certain types of rapashi diets. So they do like a varied diet, but they prefer insects, especially when they're little, which makes sense because that's what they can mostly fit in their mouth when they're little. So,
nice.
So the omnivores that prefer insects. So this right here, let's see if I could grab without them freaking out. You're okay. You're okay. I know, buddy. I know. I get it. It's scary. So they're going to freak out when they see each other as two males. I don't want to stress them out too much, so we're not going to do this too long, only a few seconds. This right here on your right-hand side, that's going to be a wild-type Lacerta. This is a breeder-size male. This is one I produced about 2 years ago. And this one right here, is a breeder size melanistic male, which is on the left hand side. So you have equivalent age males. One has a regen tail, one does not. Both breeder size males. I've heard my oldest Lacerta that I have is a 7, I believe, but they could live a lot longer than that. I've heard of them living high teens. Even someone saying that they live about 20 years. I don't know if that's true. But the oldest lizard I have here is 7 years old and doing awesome. So
Nice.
Yep.
All right, guys. So that's the wild type and then melanistic Lacertas. So we will wrap that up and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.